It's Steam Next Fest October 25 edition, and whilst I can't do very many videos this time around due to other commitments, I did get some racing games in. Of course I did. And I'm kicking off this list with iRacing Arcade, and I'm buying this on day one. It's made by Original Fire Games that made Karting Superstars, but more importantly Circuit Superstars, because this is a lift and drop almost of Circuit Superstars, from graphics, style, handling, and just the general vibe of what it's bringing. But instead of it being from a top-down isometric-y perspective, it's from a chase cam like Karting Superstars. So it's like a merger of the two. There's real-world tracks. The demo has Tsukuba and Porsches for real-world cars, but the actual full game will have 12 real circuits and IMSA and F4, for example, as different types of cars to enjoy. They look like they're going to handle kind of similar, but have some nuances to them. I'm really excited for this because it just played exactly how I expected this game to play, but having spent countless hours on Circuit Superstars already. It's grippy, but it requires a simcade level of finesse, but because there's 12 cars all smashing around really tiny circuits, you're all crashing into each other, having to dodge out of the way and make some ludicrous dive bombs occasionally. This all works incredibly well, but I'd be interested to see how far you can push this out across the course of bigger, longer races. And for me, I think once this game goes live, it's coming with 12 tracks. I anticipate that it probably won't have reverse versions of them, which is a shame, to kind of double up. But I would want more and more DLC packs of more tracks and maybe series coming later on down the line to make this beefy, because I feel like both Circuit Superstars and particularly Karting Superstars were cut short in their prime and weren't able to be delivered upon. Circuit Superstars I still feel became more of a rounded game, but there's a few things in there that just, there feels like a lot of work that went into it for like one track, and you're like, why did you do dirt? So with all of that, I'm hoping that the same fate doesn't fall iRacing Arcade, but I'm super excited. Plays fantastically. Day one buy for me. Another potential day one buy for me is Retro Racing 2 by Mr. Quack, who has been releasing his retro racing games on mobile for some time, and now it's coming across to Steam, so I can finally buy them because I don't game on mobile. This is a proper traditional top-down arcade racer, formula cars going around silly circuits. But what I like about this is that each car has its own kind of variant of stats for handling, acceleration, and top speed. And you can collect power-ups that kind of charge them up as you go along, but sometimes those are off the beaten racing line, but also will then, if you angle your car so that it's so heavy on top speed and acceleration but doesn't steer as well, you're going to put yourself into a bit of a problem. This game was incredibly fun to play in the demo. It gave you several different tracks, going from 1v1 racing up to 10 cars bombing around the tracks itself. I think what will probably make or break this game when I'm buying it, though, is making sure that the difficulty level is able to keep up with however quick and fast you're going. And I think there's local multiplayer as well. So yes, day one for me. And the game plays like a grippy version of Super Sprint and Championship Sprint. And for us oldies, that's all you need to know. Keeping the arcade world running, we've got Karting for Fun. And this is a kart racing game that actually plays quite nippily and niftily, and the handling is very grippy and quite kart-like, actually, to be honest. I'm not saying this is like Kartcraft, but it was solid and predictable, and whatever I steered into, it felt like there was some good karting physics going on here. But they've paired it with a almost Wreckfest level of destructible environment around you. So it handles quite simish, but still pointy and arcadey, so more simcade, I guess, Simon, now that you've said that sentence. But you've got boxes in the way that could be exploded. There's tyres all the way around the edge of the track, which if you crash into will then spread out everywhere and then start exploding all over the place. And there was just generally carnage everywhere. The demo itself was incredibly fun to play. I really enjoyed the fact that the AI seemed to be smashing into each other and then getting stuck and in the wrong places, but then were also quite nippy if they got a clear run. And so I feel like this definitely was a left field surprise from absolutely nowhere that I thoroughly enjoyed, and so it was straight onto my wish list. And this is probably a day one for me as well, because I had that much joy and fun from it straight out the box. Next on the list is a bit of a more left field racing game called Race Worms, and this is perfect for parties. You play as little worms that can move around as long as it's tunnelling through dirt. And whenever you leap out from the surface, you kind of need to leapfrog your way from one piece of dirt to the other to keep going. The 2 tracks that are in the demo had different lanes, and things would kind of change as you moved around, as like bits of metal or like agricultural machines would kind of get in your way as you were moving around from A to B. And you could also pick up various different weapons to kind of throw back on others. And so it was almost like it was turning like a speedrunner style game into much more of a wormy based thing. It reminded me a little bit of one of my favourite party game races of all time, Muddle Dash. But instead of trying to smash a present out of each other's hands to try and deliver it to the birthday person, this was about trying to block off the world and also batting other worms out of the way so that you could then get clear leapfrogs from dirt to dirt to dirt to then make it to the finish line as fast as possible. This was really fun to play. I was even doing it like as 2 people, myself, keyboard versus controller, so that we could kind of show you what it looks like in multiplayer. Day 1 buy for me. This is stupid fun. Next up is another weird game called It's Okay to Fail. And the idea behind this is that you're playing as this weird contractible muscle man trying to get through various different environmental obstacle courses. And you do this by using your shoulder buttons to either contract and then restrict out the arms and the legs, but they've got like little bars on, like they've not been popped out of their plastic casing properly. And these act almost like linchpins to then get onto balance beams so that you can kind of sway yourself around everywhere, or catch onto little hooks that can then swing you around. And it reminded me ever so slightly of Action Henk, if you remember that from probably about 10 years ago. But it's got that cutesy toy aesthetic, stupid obstacle courses that are going to make you rage. And I kept running out of time. I couldn't make it to the end of the level in this demo to even get to where I needed to get to. But I could understand the physics behind it and trying to work out how I would do it better. And so if you're interested in a time trial rage-based game that looks stupid and has some really silly ideas, It's Okay to Fail. It says it on the tin. It's definitely okay to fail, but I thought this game was a success. Next up is Pulse, and this is the fastest game on this list by far. You play as this kind of warp speed flight glider car thing, and in the demo you're placed into these futuristic towns and cities, and you're trying to go point to point racing on daily leaderboards to try and see who's the fastest that can get to all of the points quicker. But as you move around, you will almost grind to a halt if you press like the drift or stop button, so that you can then get around really tight corners. But the key here is that you can then glide upwards and get like this power thrust and go at real light speed across the map, which is really good so long as you've got good aim. So long as you get bad aim though, you'll then fly off onto this totally different trajectory and then be like, oh, I've totally missed where I'm trying to get to, and therefore your time trial against everyone else on the leaderboard is going to suffer. This was a real beast to handle and get right, but there's definitely something here that I enjoyed. And so, like It's Okay to Fail beforehand, it's gone onto my wish list. I'm not sure either of those games are day one buys for me, because this needs some polish and finesse just so that it feels less like an absolute beast everywhere to try and keep hold of. This was like the bucking bronco of this game's list. Of this list of games. But I was really enjoying the challenge, even if I felt a little overwhelmed at times. And so I'm going to keep coming back to this one as I see more updates to it. Pulse, I think, could be a little cult classic in the making. Talking of cult classics, Carcam is definitely one of them, but I'm sad to say the handling of this game is atrocious. The idea behind this is that you are in an RC cam with a camera on it, and you're watching the RC cam kind of go through the house. And in the level that you're playing, you have to kind of go down some spiral staircases and go under these different like light checkpoints dotted around different rooms. But if you end up on like the shaggy carpet rug, then the handling is all over the place and you can't get anywhere. But actually, the car was so skiddy and desperate to swap ends with itself at all times, it was almost impossible to drive. And sometimes I found it easier to just go backwards. The other key thing with this is that your car battery constantly pulls down. And so if you end up on like 0% battery, you're just ticking over and moving forward very slowly. So there are different charge points dotted around each lap that you need to then get onto, recharge, and then blast off ahead. But yeah, this was wild and weird. Such a unique camera perspective. I love the fact that the house that you're going around is being lived in. So there's like a room where someone's walking around the living room. He will stand on you, but also kick you out of the way. And so I really love the idea of what this game is going for, but the controls are horrific. And so that's what needs to be worked on to make this game have any chance of being playable. Because at the moment this looks like a cool idea, but I wouldn't want to wish my enemies playing on this at the moment with its current handling. Next up is Nitroglycerine, and this is a balancing act of daredevil driving across mountain ranges and all kinds of forest areas. You've got a box of nitroglycerine in the back of your truck, and you need to make sure that you drive it across various different things in a steady environment, otherwise it go boom. The problem is that most of the environment around you has got all kinds of potholes or logs in the way, or whenever you get to a bridge of any sort, sadly, it's all falling apart. And so you then start to get stuck and wedged in bits of wood that's falling over everywhere, and then boom. I came across parts of this game where I could not work out how to get across it, particularly a river where there seems to be this ramp for you to then try and roll yourself over or throw yourself over. But actually, if you do so, the nitroglycerine goes boom anyway. So I got totally stuck quite early on in this demo, but I did like what the game was trying to do, and I found it oddly tense and quite funny. As after 3 lives go boom, the mission and therefore the demo was over. It handled quite well outside of just not quite understanding how to get over some of these obstacles, but maybe I was just missing something. And so this one's gone onto my wish list. Next up is Virtuoso GP Race On. And in a similar way to Carcam, Virtuoso GP Race On has the aesthetic nailed down, but not the handling model. This is trying to be like a Virtua Racer style, early 90s, late 80s, big chonky polygon style racer. And we've got quite a few of these out already, and they all feel far more developed and more nuanced than what this game does. I was racing around almost every single corner at high speed, at top speed, just kind of moving and shaking left and right, occasionally taking my finger off the accelerator to get round a really tight hairpin, and that was it. And even during the demo itself, I played the same track twice and was already bored of the game because there's no finesse or nuance to the handling, because you can bomb through everything at full pelt, and you need to because of the way how the timer counts down. Unless you're in easy mode, you have to just go full pelt. You can't afford to take your finger off the accelerator, and that's the only way you can get anywhere. And so I didn't enjoy this game at all, I'm afraid. This might still pique some interest for some retro chunky polygon enthusiasts, but I would argue there's already 10 other games out there that do this better and are out and reasonably priced that will give you far more than what this game currently offers. Next up is Tired, and I swear I played this game somewhere else, but Tired reminds me of Roll Cage Stage 2 and its weird puzzle tracks. And so what goes on with Tired is you've got these awkwardly weird, twisty, bendy, above ground, above and below sea level tracks. And that took a bit of getting used to, thinking, why am I going underwater? And every instinct tells you that this is going to kill you, but no, the track does continue underwater. This is all about time trials and trying to see how you do against the actual clocks for gold, silver and bronze, but then also on the online leaderboards. And it takes a lot to get this right because your car is very skiddy and it's slightly low gravity, so you don't have the grip that you normally would expect to find in an arcade racer, and so you have to judge the corners accordingly. It's also quite fast, and so those two don't obviously go nicely together, and so when you've got that with some wild camber and almost roller coaster style tracks, Tide starts to stand out as being a really tricky game to get right, but incredibly satisfying when you do. And so this one has gone onto my wish list, and it's made me desperate to get back onto Roll Cage Stage 2 again, so I'm going to be whipping out my PS2 in a bit to have a go. Jack's 510 Racing is next up, and this is an ambitious title, and I quite liked it to a point, but I started to find it a little bit lacking substance, I guess. The idea behind this is that you are in an open world environment, racing around doing all different types of challenges. Some are racing, some is avoiding the cops and stopping a UFO trying to kidnap you, which I thought was quite funny. And there's a full-blown like hillbilly soundtrack going on in the background with some stadium rock going on occasionally too. But what I quite liked the most about this was that it felt very pack racing in a lived-in world. And so there was traffic everywhere, you score points for mowing down pedestrians and killing them, but there's 20 cars all bombing through, like smashing up fire engines, for example, trying to get to around the city as it goes. And so it felt lived in and chaotic. That chaos didn't always translate well to a good racing experience though. And so there's a balance, I think, to be had where Jack 510 Racing needs to pick and decide, is it going to be pure bananas arcade, or is it going to try and offer a real racing experience too, because it doesn't feel like it can have both with the way how it's going. It was enjoyable, it's definitely a vibe, and it's definitely one of the best and biggest and boldest personalities that you can find in a racing game, particularly in this list. But yeah, it just needs to pick a bit of a lane for me over what it wants to be, and I think it's probably better suited going down the bananas arcade route and really fully embracing the nuttiness that it's trying to provide. Next up is Go-Kart Island, and this looks like a cute little SNES world, open world karting game, and it is, but I was surprised at how decent this game is. It handles well, the drift is really pointy and swings you around quite quickly, and yeah, although the game itself has a couple of issues around weapons, which I'll get onto in a second, it handles well, it plays well. I quite like the fact that you're racing from like neighbour to pick up different missions, and there was a variety of them even in the demo itself. Lots of little collectibles to try and find around. It feels like the open world level select of like Crash Team Racing, but just expanded into like a 8-bit RPG environment. It was quite cool. My main criticism of Go-Kart Island is that an awful lot of the weapons that you fire are homing. And so if you're out front leading and the other three or four opponents want to fire things at you because you're the leader, you're going to get smashed in all of them. And that doesn't feel particularly fair because there's very little that you can avoid because almost everything is a homing weapon. And so if that could be toned down slightly, I feel like Go-Kart Island would then get the right balance. Because this feels like it's aimed at younger audiences, but I think they'll get frustrated with that specific gameplay mechanic. So let's see how it goes, but pleasantly surprised and onto my wish list. Grannies on Wheels is up next, and this is like a claymation style racer with also some arena-based combat. And my main thing with this is I didn't understand what was going on. There are some things that I really like about this. The fact that the world being in claymation-style graphics deformed around you was quite cool, because one of the things you could do in the demo was a 10-lap round like a circular oval race. But you'd have to find new ways of trying to get around the terrain because it would kind of crash down and clump out and become really like unbalanced and almost undrivable with little potholes everywhere causing you problems. And there was a big digger trying to like smash you if you got stuck and stayed still. But then when it came to the more arena battle style gameplay, you seem to have like cups of tea in the back. They didn't seem to represent lives, and then sometimes they did, and then your granny would kind of fly out of the car and you'd respawn. But what it was trying to tell you to do was like collect all of the different cups of tea. But when you did, it didn't really score points. And I was totally confused as to what actually was the winning criteria and how that was being selected. And so whilst I think there is something definitely here for Grannies on Wheels, I've put it onto my wish list, but more out of curiosity to see what gets formed and developed over time, because this was very hit and miss during my gameplay. Next up is Rusty Road Racing, and this has one of the strangest control schemes I've come across in a while. It's a rally game based on old retro vintage cars and some hillbilliness going on in the background. But when you go racing, you move forward and accelerate by pushing the right analog stick forward, but you've also got to steer left and right with it too. And so you're constantly pressing forward and then going left and right with it, pressing back to kind of brake. And I was sat there thinking, I've got so many other buttons on this controller, why are we all just going on one analog stick? And I could not get used to that control scheme at all. And it really started to bug and annoy me. And so Rusty Road Racing didn't gel for me, but fundamentally it's an okay-ish rally game. Definitely towards the arcade end of things, because it wasn't as if I was bouncing around having to deal with all kinds of different terrain issues or something. It just felt like a good rally-like aesthetic that I was then racing through quite quickly and at speed. But that control scheme, oh dear, please give me the option to change that, because that was not fun at all. The last game on the list is Racer Overdrive, which had a high-octane, high-energy intro sequence with loads of cars like dashing around everywhere to introduce you to this like street racer's gonna turn good against the world of crime. And I was well up for the hyper-serialized way how this game was trying to portray itself. When it got into the actual racing though, I found this game to be quite point and squirty. And what I mean by that is that if you were drifting, you went into a very like rigid drift and was quite difficult to keep together. And then you'd have to charge up your drift all the way to a massive boost. And when you set off your boost, you couldn't like stop it again. And if your boost was higher and more charged than the AI opponent that you hit, they would then explode. I found this to be fine, but it really... and I appreciate this as a demo, but it felt very on or off, and there was a lack of nuance between how you would steer, drive, accelerate, boost, drift. And it just needs some finesse and transitioning between those to make this game play better. And if it can do that, I think, again, this has got some good personality chops behind it that could become a little mini cult classic for a few. But until that happens, the racing itself just needs a wee bit of tweaking here and there to make it a bit more fun. And those are the racing games that I played in October 2025's Steam Next Fest. Hope you found something useful. Drop us down in the comments if you did, and hopefully I'll see you again on High Playing Games.